Again, not gonna cut it. So, more Star Wars. I didn't want to hate Disney Star Wars. In the beginning, the only people who hated it, sight unseen of course, were Gamergaters, who realized that their shit was getting old, and that the misogyny factory needed to roll out a new product line. Oh wait, here comes a Star Wars movie with a female lead, and a female executive producer. Perfect excuse to make the same YouTube video over and over again for the next 5 years. Just as long as we don't have to actually change. Meanwhile, I was over here being meh about Star Wars, because as a Trekkie, son of 2 Trekkies, I've been meh about Star Wars my entire fucking life. But now, after 5 years, and as many movies, ranging in quality from, oh god, to meh, to, damn it, you almost had something there, I'm starting to reevaluate my position on Star Wars in general. Especially since the oh god side of the scale just got a whole lot heavier. There are those in the Critics Guild who think Star Wars is inherently reactionary. That the original trilogy ended an era of American film, the so-called New Hollywood era, that at least tried to make films with some kind of social relevance to the times that they were made in and the culture they were a product of. This isn't wrong, but phrasing it that way only reinforces the perception that we critics are all joyless scolds, whose hot takes always boil down to some version of, you know that thing you like? Well, it's bad. And even though we say you shouldn't feel bad for liking it, there are entire multi-billion-dollar industries out there whose only job is to get people to identify with the brands that they consume, to the point where they take any criticism of that brand as a personal insult. But it's okay, we tell ourselves in our more unguarded moments. We can totally fight that by yelling at people even louder. Right? By being even snarkier? Even more smug? Yeah. Fighting against that preconception is one of my many damn fool idealistic crusades. So when I came up with my own Star Wars theory, my first instinct was to completely forget about it and go back to playing more Bloodborne. Seemed the appropriate time to go back to Yharnam. Because, even if it isn't inherently reactionary, I am now overcome by the idea that each new Star Wars trilogy is a portent of doom. And I don't mean eternal. Check the timeline and tell me I'm wrong. New Hope comes out in 1977, when it looks like affable Southern Governor Jimmy Carter is about to cruise to re-election on the back of not being Richard Nixon or Gerald Ford. Then the hostage crisis happened in Iran, and we know now that Ronald Reagan deliberately rat-fucked Jimmy out of solving it before the election. This gave the American right wing 12 good years to proudly march our country back into the Gilded Age. And we were all made poorer, sicker, and dumber for it. To the point where Bill Clinton started to actually look good. Fast forward to Phantom Menace in 1999. When it looks like boring Vice President Al Gore is about to cruise to his first actual election in years on the back of not being Bill Clinton, despite being the heir apparent to gutless third-way Clintonism. Basically, Republican light, as my father used to say. Tastes like crap, less filling, so worst of both worlds. Fast forward, not even 2 years later, and the Supreme Court outright hands the election to Ronald Reagan's vice president's dry-drunk son. In a manner so obviously fraudulent, they even included a note to their future selves in their ruling that basically says, don't cite this for anything. Like, at all. Ever. Skip to December 2015, when it looks like former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton the true heir of gutless Clintonian third-wayism, is about to cruise through an uncontested primary to yet another actual election. And she's so confident she can beat the racist game show host who ate the Republican Party that she doesn't even bother campaigning in Michigan or Wisconsin. Oops. Couldn't have been her fault, though. Must have been those Russian hackers and their insidious Facebook posts. I'm not saying correlation equals causation, but I am saying I live on the West Coast, where we learn the hard and painful way that when all of our animals start acting weird for no discernible reason, there's probably an earthquake coming. And that's the closest thing to an original thought I had while watching Rise of Skywalker. Oh, I'm sorry. Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker. Oh, I'm sorry. Again, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. The saga continues. Wu-Tang! Wu-Tang! You don't need me to tell you that this is an incoherent mess of a movie, clearly stitched together at the last minute by a studio that's as cowardly and hypocritical as they are rich and powerful. You already know this, and if you don't, there are plenty of people on the internet who are prepared to tell it to you. Hell, they made an entire New York Times piece about it. You have to read between the lines a bit, but real heads know. This was meant to be damage control and taken by people like me as a warning shot. Co-writer Chris Terrio is quoted in that piece, comparing making a quote-unquote movie like this to being in a war. And as the co-writer of Justice League, I'm sure he's speaking from experience. I feel like I've been in a war just trying to write about the damn thing. And I'm sure being there on the day would have actually killed me. Even with the cautionary tale of Josh Trank at my back, I still would have shown up high and drunk to set. And I salute anyone who had the constitution to make it through this thing sober. This movie, low-key, broke the brains of most civilian critics and turned we nerd critics into even more insufferable pedants than we already were. Now we all seem to be trying to out-Plinkett Plinkett. A fool's errand in 2010, and especially now. Rise of Skywalker's incoherence almost perfectly lends itself to the kind of stage-drunk close reading that Red Letter Media popularized. Invigorating a form of critique that's like that guy in the zombie movie who hides his bite mark until it's too late. But that's inside baseball. A game Plinkett himself tried to play back in his Force Awakens review, to middling results, because he was trying to be careful. We were all trying to be careful back then, except for those of us who immediately jumped on the rampant speculation and Star Wars fan theory hype trains. Let me take this time to offer sincere apologies to all of you broken clocks out there who happen to be right about one thing at least. There was actually a reason why Daisy Ridley was the only member of this cast allowed to keep her British accent. Seriously. That's what made some people call the final twist in this needlessly convoluted mystery box of a trilogy. J.J. Abrams doesn't big up the mystery box nearly as much as he used to. But then again, it's pretty much served its purpose. These days, every marketing department at every studio in Hollywood starts salivating like Pavlov's dogs the second they catch a whiff of JJ, his production company, or his Padawans, like Lindelof and Kurtzman. And that's not likely to change anytime soon. Despite this sucker making a full $1 billion less than Force Awakens, and $300 million less than the so-called worst of them, Last Jedi. When your economics textbook talked about diminishing returns, this is exactly what they meant. And it's the very reason Disney abandoned their original plan for this trilogy in the first place. This was supposed to be a Colin Trevorrow joint. He got hired right off Jurassic World, and he brought his Jurassic World co-writer, Derek Connolly, with him. That was pretty much the only reason I reviewed that piece of shit, so thanks, Disney. We don't know what they did for the 2 years they worked on this production, But whatever it was, they still get story credit, so some of it's still in here somewhere. Regardless, Trevorrow must have figured he'd balance out his karma by releasing a small, cheap, indie-looking family drama in between franchise blockbusters. It was called Book of Henry, and it got laughed out of the festival circuit so hard even we internet critics noticed, and gladly joined in the dog pile. 2 months later, Trevorrow and Connolly left, citing the usual creative differences, which tells you everything and nothing. Though Trevorrow apparently donated whatever money he got out of that story credit to charity. So, good on you, bro. That's definitely more than I would do, let me tell you. Stepping back for a second, we can see the entire history of Disney's Star Wars as a history of reactionary panic and counter-panic. Of a studio either burning out or dicking over its directors, leaving them flapping in the breeze. Or on Twitter, where there's really nothing much to do but go crazier and crazier. So I wasn't surprised when Disney pulled JJ back in. Or when he, Terrio, and the Lucasfilm Brain Trust, supposedly responsible for ensuring the quality and integrity of the Star Wars films, immediately began to walk back even the most half-hearted and tepid stabs at originality that The Last Jedi brought to its first 2 acts. Oh, the finished film seems to say, were you interested in what might happen if a Star Wars protagonist had to figure out her place in this universe without recourse to the franchise's various aristocratic bloodlines? Did you want to see what might happen to a Star Wars antagonist who rejected the chance for redemption for once? Who actively chose to become the big bad himself after killing the previous one, as every Sith has done ever since the time of Darth Bane? Of course. I am Star Wars Reckoning, here to end the borrowed time you've all been living on. Did you like how Rian Johnson managed to stealth remake both Empire and Jedi at the same time? Were you dumb enough to think this might clear the decks for the climactic act of this trilogy to strike out in some bold new direction? Well, fuck you very much, Rise of Skywalker says, to me, personally, with every single frame, except for this one, because telekinesis is my fetish. And this one, because, yes, quarantine got me horny on Maine. We're gonna remake Return of the Jedi again. And we're gonna do it so hard, we're gonna go all the way back to Endor's Sanctuary Moon. We're even gonna bring back the Emperor and send the whole cast on a glorified fetch quest to figure out where he's hiding. At last, all 3 of our main characters will be on screen at the same time. Will they do anything interesting? Not really. But at least you'll get to see them. Look at them all, being all young and hot. In the old Star Wars expanded universe of novels, comics, and video games that this trilogy supplanted, Emperor Palpatine used the same cloning technology he used to create the Grand Army of the Republic to survive past the end of Return of the Jedi and become a reoccurring antagonist for Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, and the droids, and their fledgling new Republic. Movie Palpatine must have used the Force to peek through the barriers between dimensions, because it turns out he did the exact same damn thing. And he's got his cloning program up and running so well that even his failures come out 7 feet tall and able to choke motherfuckers out from the next star system over. And so Sheev Palpatine is revealed to be the big bad who's been lurking in the shadows this whole time. A phantom menace to the last. But about halfway through the film, he also comes up with this cockamamie scheme to possess his granddaughter's body with old Sith magic. Which is actually the exact same scheme he came up with in the comic book miniseries trilogy that introduced his clone body backup plan in the first place. Only difference being, back in Dark Empire, he planned to possess the body of Leia and Han's son, Anakin Solo. But we'll get to his modern reincarnation in a bit. Wait your fucking turn, mate. My original theory/fear only gets stronger over time. That Disney is basically Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That they bought the Star Wars universe in order to dismantle it and sell its parts back to an audience that didn't read in the 1990s and is probably even less willing to do so now. Hard to get invested in an expanded universe when the last one just got snapped away, a problem we comic book fans are all too aware of. Someone from the Marvel offices should have probably had lunch with somebody from the Lucasfilm offices in the past 5 years and explained this fact to them. Hell, for all I know they did, and that's where The Mandalorian came from. The only sources I have are glorified press releases at this point, like that New York Times piece. Seemingly designed to calm the nerves and hoover up the opening day ticket sales of people who call the New York Times fake news and piss off literally everyone else. The Rose Tycho fan club, the Finn Poe shippers, the Finn Rey shippers, definitely. Hell, even the Reylos walked away disappointed. We all got teased, because the mystery box really is just a big old tease when you get right down to it. The trick is not to open the box until you already have your audience's money. But it's a good thing that you can just lie to people with no consequences at all. Like, if anything, the more brazen and consistent your lies, the more you'll be rewarded for it. Oh no, they're not dead. This isn't purgatory. No, there's something much more mysterious going on around here. Trust us. Oh no, we're not just remaking Wrath of Khan again. That would be blasphemy. Oh no, we're not going to just remake Jedi and bits of Empire again. After all, Rian Johnson already did that, didn't he? We wouldn't want to step on his toes. Still, I mean, we will openly shit on him in the pages of the New York Times, but that's just some pre-release hype. I'm sure he doesn't take any of that personally. Rise of Skywalker is the most divisive J.J. Abrams film, cry the children of the village, who have obviously forgotten about Star Trek Into Darkness. Lucky bastards. The mystery box mode of production only works because it creates space for the audience to imagine what might be in the box. The more imaginative among them can make a whole film in their heads months before they see the one on screen. And that's why so many criticize Rise of Skywalker for its wasted potential. Since none of the brilliant ideas that we, the audience, came up with wound up there on screen, obviously, potential was wasted. They're right, but for the wrong reasons, as usual. Most people can't imagine much beyond This Ain't Star Wars Episode 9, a XXX parody, and so they are terminally sad that, while our three heroes never got to fuck, we know for damn sure that Palpatine did at one point. And thinking about that fact has only made our drinking problems worse, so cheers, JJ. But if you want to talk about wasted potential, look no further than every dead stormtrooper in this franchise. A waste of a potential ally, ever since FN2187 had his little moment of clarity back at the beginning of Force Awakens. Or so we thought, until about halfway through this film, when Finn and the crew meet up with another band of ex-stormtroopers, hiding out in the grasslands of Endor. That confused everyone mightily because, of course, Star Wars planets are only supposed to have one biome per planet. So the idea that you could have those massive, lush redwood forests without, say, a sea or a grassland that leads down to the sea, that's just enough to blow people's minds, apparently. But that gets into a whole nitpick thing that I don't even want to get into right now. Gotta focus. So Finn has a little chat with their leader Janna, formerly TZ-1719, and both describe the sudden, inexplicable revelations that led them to overcome a lifetime of First Order brainwashing. It's like a force, Finn says at one point, and my brain broke right then and there, with a snapping sound, almost exactly like Batman's back breaking over Bane's knee. I had to look around the theater to make sure nobody else could hear that. Oh, I thought, when I realized I was safe. So, you're telling me that the Force gets to decide which stormtroopers get PTSD from all the mass casualties they bear witness to or cause, and which ones get to whistle while they work, exterminating whole planetary populations. Back in the Force Awakens review, I worried that, while Disney had thrown Lucas's ideas for this trilogy in the trash, they'd kept his overriding ethos. Oh, the Force decides who wins and who loses, because that's how I wrote it. Great, George. Great way to let me know I shouldn't care about any of this bullshit. Great on Disney, too, for proving me right. Boy, do I hate being right all the time. No, really, it actually sucks, kids. Be wrong about everything, loudly, and often, and not only will you get rewarded for it, the rewards will be much more handsome and tangible. Especially in this shithole country of ours. We can see the final form of Lukensian predestination in the climactic battle of this film, as the ghosts of the old Sith Empire assemble to watch their avatar give his final order, and the disembodied voices of every Jedi in this series with a speaking role, including Qui-Gon and Little Orphan Annie, assemble to give just Rey one final pep talk. It's supposed to be a big inspirational moment, but fuck that. Fuck Jedi and Sith alike. Luke Skywalker may have been wrong to run away and bury his head in the sand, but he was not wrong about the two competing orders being trapped in, to quote Obi-Wan, a symbiote circle of escalating violence that's already gotten to the point of wiping out whole star systems. How long till we're wiping out whole galaxies, Only the characters in this film are foolish enough to believe that one dead Palpatine will actually end anything. Since Star Wars loves to quote itself so much, I guess I will too. Because we are all, quote, pawns, watching other pawns go through the motions at the behest of a corporation so spectacularly out of touch, they thought Marvel and Star Wars were boy franchises before they bought them. Their words, not mine. But Dave, you say, we had to give the people what they wanted. They wanted to see Ben Solo redeemed. They wanted a perpetual fetch quest plot leading to a land, sea, and air battle that's the final confrontation between good and evil. And we know that's what they wanted because that's what all Star Wars is, right? So you say, and I'm sure you could come up with plenty of anecdotal evidence to justify that. Same as I could come up with to justify the idea that people don't actually know what the hell they want. And by people, I mean everyone. Myself very much included. But also the Lucasfilm Committee to restore Star Wars to its former glory by telling the creatives what to do or not do. All the committee seems to do is play Star Wars video games. Hence the Jedi healing that we finally see in a film 9 movies in. Wow, that could have been so useful at so many points prior to this. Yeah, good thing it never came up before. Or searching the internet for articles about plot holes that are really about, more often than not, desperate writers trying to go viral by pissing off nerds. Pretty much the easiest game in town, still, today. Hence, we got a whole movie to explain the Death Star's fatal structural flaw. Another whole movie about why Han Solo starts off A New Hope being such a cynical bastard. And, at the end of this one, Chewie finally gets his medal. Great. Wonderful. Shit. Both our main character and our original point of view character just got the legs cut out from under their arcs for no reason I can see other than to placate the kind of people who think force powers should be determined by blood quanta because they don't know how genetics work. But I'm supposed to cheer because Chewie got his damn medal. The Falcon should be his real medal for surviving all of this, but he's probably going to wind up sharing that with yet another goddamn Humie. Fuck all them haters, though, right? Fine. Speaking of haters, let's talk about good old Ben Solo, who spends the movie trying to run the same con on Palpatine that Vader tried to run with Luke back in Return of the Jedi. Surprise, surprise. To pretty much the same result. But then he feels his mother die from half a galaxy away, and then he has a little confab with the ghost of his dead father. Again, was that you, Terrio? Because, again, Batman v Superman. Like, whatever. Point being, this makes Kylo realize, well, this whole dark side shit sucks. Gee, I should probably pull a face turn. It's the exact opposite of what happened to his grandpa when great-grandma Shmi died. You see, it's like poetry, they rhyme, making everyone I've talked to think that Leia should have probably died in the last movie. After I watched Revenge of the Sith, I can remember standing on the edge of my friendly neighborhood theater's parking lot, looking back and going, well, at least that's over. After I watched Rise of Skywalker, I stood in the exact same spot, but quoted the immortal words of the boss from Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's over. Time to get shit-faced. But of course, nothing's ever over. Nothing ever ends. This film's real problem was its truncated lead time. They had 5 years to make this Star Wars, but then the guy they originally hired to do it either quit or got fired. Creative differences always makes me think it's a little of both, maybe, kinda. Then they only had 3 years to make this Star Wars. Even George, in the depths of his last trilogy, gave himself 3 years between entries. And, well, the results, I think, speak for themselves. And then, their main star had a heart attack while coming back home from London, leaving them with only 2 years. And that's not nearly enough. Say what you want about the prequels, and some have said far too much. But watching them does not feel like watching a cartoon character build a bridge over a chasm, never actually falling until they look down and see the drop. And it still made a cool $1 billion before it even hit home video. Just in time for a pandemic with everybody locked up inside. So that's how I know nothing is over. I can already hear the next Star Wars film screaming at me from the future. But it's fine. It's fine. This is fine. Because, to me, Star Wars was never much more than a successful sci-fi, SF, sci-fantasy franchise with a too invested for its own good fan base. Now, of course, it's just that, but with more bad movies to its name than good. A franchise whose TV, novel, and comic book entries are orders of magnitude better than the majority of its feature films. And as a Trekkie, son of 2 Trekkies, I have a lifetime of experience dealing with just that sort of thing. So, if any of you warriors out there are in need of some counseling, my DMs are always open. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked this video, hit the like button and the subscribe button. and the little bell next to the subscribe button that may or may not even be there anymore. I don't fucking know or care. And if you really like this video, then consider supporting the show on Patreon. Much like the fine people whose names I'm about to read right now. Mr. Hootie Dean, Detective Steve, The After Movie Diner, and Stu G.